In this video, we'll be covering the general workflow that you're going to want to follow when using Jobin.cloud to perform your standard daily tasks. So once you finish setting up the general framework for your workgroup that we've covered in our earlier course videos, standard tasks that you're going to want to repeat are of course going to start with sourcing the desired contacts. You can find a handy import section here at the top left, which shows you all the potential import methods that you can use to add contacts into your repository. Let's say we want to find some new contacts from LinkedIn, and that I want to use a bulk search. On LinkedIn, I can now define my search criteria. To keep things simple, I'm searching for a Java developer. After you've defined your search, you're going to want to press on the Jobin extension, and then select how many from the search result you want to import. Now in my case, I'll just keep the default 100. After that, you're of course going to want to actually organize them by properly segmenting them. And to do this, you can either assign them to a pipeline or assign them a tag. In my case, I already have a job pipeline for Java developers. Pipelines are great because they allow me to follow an actual workflow for any contact I assign into them, because they come with a dedicated pipeline that you can customize. Tags instead are great if I simply want to create a standard listing, similar to the leads list over on Sales Navigator. I can also define a note if there's anything in particular about this group of contacts that I want to just annotate, like for example if they're from a particular event that requires some extra context that I want to keep track of. But with that said, simply press Start Import and that will begin the contact extraction. With the initial extraction completed, we have the basic information for all our contacts. If you're confident in your LinkedIn filter, you can already start selecting your contacts and accordingly begin interacting with them by either sending them messages or assigning them to campaigns. If instead you've built an automated ideal candidate screening and you would like Jobin.cloud to screen those contacts that you've imported, then you're going to want to wait for Jobin's full profile import to finish, which you can find to have automatically already started in your operations monitor over here. In fact, each of these contacts have now been fully imported with their summary, professional experience histories, skills, accomplishments, and so on. And all this information is then going to be screened by Jobin to see which contacts are the best fit. Alternatively to looking at the operations monitor to know how many contacts have finished importing, you can also find in all filters at the very bottom a profile is fully downloaded filter, which allows you to specifically filter for only fully downloaded profiles or only not fully downloaded profiles. If you've waited for the full profile import to finish, or if you're operating with previously imported profiles, you can press the refresh button at the top of your search result, and this will automatically refresh all the results for you. And since we've already built a framework with an ideal candidate in place for our Java developer job, all the contacts that are appearing are in fact already automatically being screened for us. We can in fact tell from the fitting index bar that each contact has, which is displaying according to the desired criteria that we've defined, and if they happen to be not fitting. We can then further shortlist things by pressing the Show Only Fitting button to automatically remove any contact that didn't meet our minimum requirements, and by also setting a minimum score threshold. So for example, I can only display results that have at least 52% or higher scores. Now that we've found the contacts that we want to reach out to, all we need to do is select them, which you can either do manually by drawing a selection, or we can press the All button to automatically select all results. And we now simply have to choose how to interact with them, either to send a message, to send a connection request, or to run an automated campaign, which we've already built during our earlier setup. So all we need to do is press Enter Campaign and then select the campaign we've built. This will then automatically begin running all the sequenced operation that we've added to that campaign. If you're not using campaigns, it's important that after running your operation, make sure to move the contacts out of the current stage from your pipeline, because any newly imported profile will always be placed in the assigned stage, and you're not going to want to clutter your listing by always having contacts sitting in that same step. As soon as we've finished processing them and screening which ones we actually want to interact with, as soon as we begin interacting with them, we're going to want to move that selected bunch to a different step. Of course, you can automate that with the campaign, but in this case, I'll just move them myself. So let's say that we finished contacting all these 25 profiles. This is going to be useful because now, for future reference, whenever I search for contacts to interact with, I just go to my jobs page, and already beside each of the jobs that I've created, I can easily tell both how many I have in each stages, but I can also simply select the assigned stage, and I don't need to worry about finding those same 25 contacts again. But as mentioned, it's important to always clear the assigned stage. So since these profiles have in theory already been imported and screened, there's no need to keep these 75 sitting here to just clutter my list. So it's advisable that if they are not fitting for the position and you don't want to reach out to them, to also reject them from the pipeline, which you can do from this button here. Like this, I can assign them as potentially not fitting or to define why they've been rejected. In this case, I'll define that they're being rejected because they are not fitting my requirements. And now I've once again nicely cleared my assigned stage for the next batch of profiles to import. Now, assuming that we've added those 25 contacts into a campaign, they're all going to start receiving messages. And the purpose of the campaign is to, of course, have those contacts engage with me. So I'm going to want to find them once they reply to me. Of course, you can see the replies either from your email inbox if you're using emails or from LinkedIn itself. But Jobin also has its very own dedicated messaging timeline, which you can open at any time from the top right of the screen. If you don't select any profile, it will show all the interactions you've had in the workgroup, which in this case is specifying that we've moved contacts into the contacted stage and that we've moved contacts to the unsuccessful exit. But of course, I can select any particular contact to see specifically the interactions that I've had with them. And this contact listing is automatically ordered by the most recent messaging interaction that you've had with them. In my case, I haven't sent any messages, so there aren't actually any being displayed. But of course, if you've sent messages, you'll see them here. Furthermore, there's also a Show Unanswered Replies switch, which you can use to specifically only find contacts that have now responded to you that you have not replied back to. So it's pretty much like a to-do list of who do you need to reply to. You can then select those contacts, easily reply to them from this convenient messaging box, and directly from the same page, you can go over to the Job Application tab on the contact to directly move them to a according stage based on their reply, which can either be to reject them if they mentioned not being interested, or to move them forward, for example, in case they've scheduled an interview. Of course, once I move them to that stage, it is once again tracked for me. And last but not least, for the end of the funnel phase of my workflow, which rather than bulk interactions, requires a more manual evaluation or manual task, like for example who you've had an interview with. And you can easily monitor that end of the funnel through the dedicated Kanban view, which you can open at the top right of the screen here. This Kanban view will allow me to see a full screen view of everyone in my current pipeline. So of course, if you have several contacts at that end of the funnel stage, you can easily both view them, but of course also further move them along the sequence. So say that we've finished having our interview and we can now move them ahead into the evaluation stage or any other stage of our preference. We can also archive them once again by using the dedicated exit stages in case they've either finished successfully the workflow by putting them in the successful exit, which is always symbolized by this handshake icon, or we can move them to the rejection stage, which is always symbolized by this pipeline with an arrow pointing outwards. We can also see counters of the total amount of contacts in each of the stages, so we can easily tell that there is 1 contact in the evaluation stage, 24 in contacted, and there are 75 in our exit stage. Furthermore, directly from the Kanban view, you can also make use of filters once again. And the filter I usually use the most is simply to search for a certain name. So I can, for example, say, show me Diego, and like this, all profiles with the name Diego will automatically appear and can be easily moved to the according stages. This pretty much sums up the regular workflow that you're going to want to repeat for your everyday tasks of simply importing profiles, screening them, adding them to a campaign, seeing who has responded from your messaging timelines, and then accordingly managing the more fine-tuned end of the funnel steps by looking at your Kanban view.